Have you ever stopped to think about the exact moment when success begins to change who you are? That imperceptible instant when confidence transforms into something dangerous? On that day in March of 2023, Steph Curry was sitting in a crowded press room, surrounded by dozens of microphones and cameras, and the air carried a palpable expectation. Reporter Jennifer Walsh did not hesitate. "Steph, you recently mentioned that perhaps it's time for the media to admit that the new generation has surpassed the old one, especially when compared to legends like Michael Jordan. Can you explain to us what this means to you?" The silence that followed was dense. Each person in the room could feel the weight of every word left unspoken. Curry stared into the void for a few seconds that seemed eternal. In his eyes, there was an unsettling novelty, something that those closest to him had been noticing for months. He took a deep breath and, with a voice laden with seriousness, began, "I need to tell a story. A story about a dinner that transformed my life. But, to understand everything, we need to go back a few months." 6 months earlier, in September of 2022, Curry was living what many would call a dream. His name appeared in all the headlines, and he was constantly placed on the same level as sports legends. However, during that period, one detail went unnoticed by everyone, except his wife, Ayesha. At that time, at home, during a simple dinner, Ayesha observed small changes. Curry would spend hours on the phone, searching for comments and praise on social media. His voice, previously full of family warmth, became distant when citing his achievements. And the children, shy and insecure, silently wondered why their father, who used to play in the backyard, was becoming so inaccessible. "Are you okay?" Ayesha asked one night, carefully while the children slept. "I'm great. There's a lot of pressure, many responsibilities," he responded, without looking away from the screen. But the truth was different. There weren't that many responsibilities, but rather the reflection of the intoxicating brilliance of recognition. Curry thought, great players fill stadiums. And in fact, his appearances guaranteed crowds. However, this brilliance began to come obscuring what really mattered. In October of 2022, a charity event in Charlotte, organized to raise funds for underprivileged children, brought together sports personalities and the community. On that cold night, the atmosphere carried a cutting cold that, somehow, intensified the emotions of those present. Upon arriving at the event, Curry was already accustomed to delays. His late entrance served to create an air of mystery. As soon as he entered the hall, conversation ceased. Gazes turned to him, and flashes went off. He smiled, greeting organizers, but then his gaze focused on a more reserved corner of the hall. There, in silence, Michael Jordan conversed with a small group of people, without fanfare, without needing to shine. This man, the same whose name was synonymous with excellence and modesty, was there. And, looking at him, Curry felt a mixture of reverence and perplexity. How could someone who had always been the comparative standard position himself so serene? Throughout the night, Curry felt a growing discomfort in his own vanity. When speaking briefly about the importance of supporting social causes, he let out unexpectedly. Perhaps it's time to admit that the new generation not only reached the greatness of the previous one, but surpassed it. Silence took over the environment. It was a loaded silence, of discomfort and disbelief. Curry descended from the stage with his heart racing, feeling both the victory of having declared what he thought and the emptiness that comment caused him. Later, returning to the hotel, while the nighttime silence tried to calm his thoughts, his phone vibrated at 3:37 in the morning. A message arrived from an unknown number. Dinner tomorrow, 7 p.m. Maple and Oak Restaurant on 5th Street. Come alone. We need to talk. MJ. The message made Curry's heart beat faster. It was Michael Jordan, seeking a private meeting. Part of him felt triumphant. Another part, restless, sensing that he was about to confront a painful truth. While looking through the hotel window, seeing the lights of Charlotte flicker in the darkness, Curry murmured to himself, "Great players fill stadiums." But this time, the phrase sounded empty. And so, without knowing exactly what awaited him in the next 24 hours, he prepared himself for a meeting that promised to change his life. Have you ever experienced that butterflies in your stomach feeling before a decisive encounter? A moment when, even without knowing what will come, you perceive that it could redefine everything? At 6:45 p.m. the next day, Steph Curry arrived at the sophisticated Maple and Oak Restaurant, located on 5th Street in Charlotte. The place was reserved exclusively for that dinner, where the environment was silent and intimate, perfect for a conversation that could not be interrupted. The restaurant manager, Marcus Williams, greeted Curry with respect. "Mr. Curry, you have my guarantee of total privacy. Michael Jordan contacted me a few days ago through a common connection. Ayesha, your wife, whose concern was transmitted to me by a close friend from the sports world, and requested this private meeting." Curry nodded, still processing the idea that his wife managed, through a reliable connection, to forward the request directly to MJ. He saw in this a sign that he was not escaping from his problems. While waiting, the clock showed 6:47 p.m., 6:52 p.m., and so the minutes passed. Finally, around 7:31 p.m., the door opened. Michael Jordan entered naturally, wearing casual clothes, but with the unmistakable elegance that characterizes him. "Steph," said Jordan, extending his hand with a serene smile. "Michael," responded Curry, shaking his hand and trying to maintain a neutral tone. Seated at the table, initial silence enveloped them. Jordan calmly leafed through the menu, as if time belonged only to them. It was a silence that carried unspoken questions. After a few moments, Jordan took a deep breath and said, "I saw what you said last night about the new generation, and this idea that the new one not only equals, but surpasses the old one." Curry, with a mixture of surprise and nervousness, began to justify himself, but Jordan raised his hand gently. "There's no need to explain yourself, Steph. I wasn't offended. What intrigues me is the why and the way those words were used." The waiter brought water and bread, and as they settled again, Jordan continued, "Can I tell you a story? I need you to see something that perhaps you haven't yet perceived." Without waiting for an answer, Jordan began his account. "In 1996, even being at my peak, I got lost amidst everything that success represented. My career was on the rise, people celebrated me, and I, like any human being, began to believe that the world should constantly validate me. It was during this period that I realized the real problem wasn't external pressure, but the way I had distanced myself from those who mattered most." Curry listened, feeling discomfort grow internally, as the narrative resonated with aspects of his own life. "My wife, at that time, tried to show me that I was distancing myself. She told me, 'You need to be present, not just physically, but truly.' But I, immersed in this aura of greatness and responsibility, judged that what I did was for everyone's good." Jordan paused, letting emotion fill the environment. "I remember one night when I arrived home and my son, Marcus, yes, my son, who was only 7 years old, hesitated before coming to hug me. That look, Steph, left me completely naked. I realized that, in search of applause and validations, I had forgotten what really mattered. And it was at that exact moment that I understood something fundamental. Silence settled, while Curry absorbed every word. I learned to distinguish between filling stadiums and filling hearts. They are two radically different things. Reflect with me. If you arrive home and your children hug you spontaneously, without remorse or hesitations, how many times has this already happened? Because, when seeking applause, hearts can empty. Jordan then leaned forward slightly and continued. My dear wife, who always had a clear vision of what was happening, alerted me 3 weeks ago through a message sent by a mutual connection. She said, Michael, I'm seeing that Steph is getting lost. He needs to hear from someone who has already been through this. That's when I decided to speak with him so he could see, before it was too late, that true greatness lies in how we touch others, and especially those we love. Jordan's words penetrated Curry's soul. The conversation became a kind of mirror, reflecting not only MJ's past mistakes, but also showing the risk of Curry following the same path. As dinner progressed, the two opened up mutually, sharing stories of triumph, of loneliness, and of moments when the search for recognition almost cost everything. At the end of dinner, when the main course had almost emptied, Jordan uttered the phrase that would come to guide Curry. Steph, great players fill stadiums, but truly, great men fill hearts. You cannot fill hearts if yours is too full of yourself. Those words hung in the air, intense and transformative. As Curry assimilated them, Jordan added, My story is not only about victories in the world, but about the importance of returning home, being present for those who really matter. My wife and my children taught me that no trophy is worth the absence of a simple hug. Curry found himself immersed in a whirlwind of emotions. Upon leaving the restaurant, he was no longer the same. Jordan's message, the call to reevaluate his priorities, and the feeling that success without love is an unbearable emptiness, transformed him from within. In the hours that followed, back at the hotel, he lay down and slept restlessly, his heart pulsing with new certainties and nagging doubts. There are moments in life when we are forced to confront not only our public image, but what we really are inside. For Steph Curry, this moment would occur on a cold October night at 11 p.m., when he found himself facing something that needed to be confronted head-on. After the dinner that shook him, Curry found himself unable to sleep. During the early morning, he remembered Jordan's words, almost like an inescapable echo. Great players fill stadiums, but truly, great men fill hearts. The next morning, with his heart still in turmoil, Curry had a long conversation with Ayesha on the phone. This time, it wasn't a superficial dialogue, but a deep exchange of feelings. He admitted his mistakes, recognizing that fame's brilliance was obscuring his true identity. Ayesha, with a trembling but resolute voice, reaffirmed, I love you, and that's why I need you to come back to us, to be the father your children deserve, the man your family expects to see at home. Feeling that he needed a real demonstration of this transformation, Curry accepted the next invitation. At 10:50 p.m., he drove to a community gymnasium in a humble Charlotte neighborhood. The place, old and full of memories, was destined to be demolished years ago. But thanks to a significant donation made by a foundation that Jordan supports, it was restored to serve the community. In this process, Jordan intervened to ensure that Robert Kim, a talented former player whose choices had led him to a life full of regrets, was hired as the gymnasium caretaker. Not out of excessive charity, but as a way to keep alive a lesson that many could learn. The gymnasium was silent, with only a few emergency lights illuminating areas dotted by time. The smell of old wood and remaining sweat filled the air. Steph waited, feeling the weight of each step that had brought him there. At 11:03 p.m., a discreet car parked outside. Michael Jordan got out calmly, wearing jeans and a sweatshirt so as not to draw attention. He waved to Curry, and together they walked toward the entrance. On the other side, an elderly man, with gray hair and a serene countenance, swept the floor carefully. When Jordan identified him, the man smiled slightly. "Robert," Jordan called with a familiar tone. "Please do me the kindness of greeting Steph." Robert Kim, with simplicity and dignity, extended his hand. "My name is Robert Kim. I've worked here for 15 years, keeping alive the memory of this place." Sitting together on the worn bleachers, Jordan began a conversation that mixed past and present. "Steph, you are confused. I see in your eyes that doubt about what really matters. Allow me to tell you something I learned from Robert." Jordan took a deep breath, and then continued. "Robert wasn't just a talented player. He had a bright future. But, like many, he let success make him someone who thought himself invincible. On a day that changed his life, after arriving late for an important commitment, he realized, sitting alone there, that he had spent his entire life trying to fill stadiums, seeking applause and recognition, but had never stopped to fill hearts." Robert, looking at Curry with honesty, spoke. "That night, I felt that everything had crumbled. I thought, I spent my entire life trying to fill stadiums, but I never valued the heart of those around me. Years passed, and, during that time, I learned that true trophies are gestures of love and presence for those who care." Jordan then resumed firmly. "It was from this experience that an idea emerged, and, over time, I myself refined this idea into something that guides me. Great players fill stadiums, but truly, great men fill hearts." It's not a phrase memorized for effect, but a truth that Robert helped me see, and that now I share with you, Steph. Those moments in the gymnasium, the simple environment, Robert's trembling and sincere voice, and Jordan's penetrating gaze, deeply touched Curry's heart. Tears began to fall, not from fleeting sadness, but from a painful recognition of mistakes made and opportunities lost. Between the silences and pauses, Jordan approached and asked, with a combination of urgency and tenderness, "Steph, when you arrive home today, do your children run to hug you? Or do they hesitate, waiting for you to be available? Have you really asked yourself why this happens?" The question echoed in the gymnasium's empty space, penetrating deep into Curry's soul. He remembered the small moments, the daughter who murmured to herself, and the son who stopped, waiting for his father to put down his cell phone. Everything began to make sense. Robert then shared more. "I didn't create this phrase in a premeditated way. It was a moment of pain, when I realized that, while I filled stadiums, I failed to fill the hearts that really mattered. And I say this to you today, so that you don't make my same mistakes." The weight of the words made Curry feel small, but, at the same time, there was a strange sense of liberation. He understood that his transformation depended only on choices, and that, even if he was already walking down the wrong path, there was still time to change. Jordan concluded, "Steph, you have the opportunity to rewrite your trajectory. You can continue to seek applause or choose to fill hearts, starting with your own. What do you truly prefer? Between tears and silence, Curry embraced the opportunity, promising himself that, from that point forward, he would dedicate himself to being the man his family deserved. True transformation does not come with fanfare, but with silent and daily choices, moments that, although discreet, accumulate forces to define a new identity. In the weeks that followed that night in the gymnasium, something inside Steph Curry changed profoundly. Back at his home, he did something rare. He sat down with Ayesha for a conversation without beating around the bush. For the first time, without technological distractions, he opened his heart. "I got lost," he confessed, gently holding her hands. "I let success intoxicate me and, without realizing it, I was distancing myself from you all. I lost what matters most in search of applause and recognition from strangers." Ayesha, with misty eyes, responded, "I love you, Steph. I always have. But I fear that, if we continue like this, we'll be losing the essence of what we built together, our family." From that day forward, Curry implemented significant changes. He left his phone stored after 7 p.m., reserving that time to be truly present with the children and Ayesha. Gradually, the change was noticed. The children returned to running into his arms without reservations, and the house filled with the warmth of a restored bond. The change also did not go unnoticed by the media. In a subsequent press conference, Jennifer Walsh returned with a question that, this time, came from genuine curiosity. "Steph, a few months ago you declared that perhaps the new generation had surpassed the old ones. What exactly changed in your perspective?" Steph looked around, remembering the Emotive gymnasium, the tears, the words of Jordan and Robert. With a firm voice, yet laden with emotion, he responded, "I realized that I was chasing something that would never fill the emptiness inside me. I was focused on filling stadiums with applause, but forgetting that true success is in the hearts we touch. Today, I learned that being great is not about being better than someone who came before, but about being great enough to put those we love at the center of everything." The audience listened, enchanted by Curry's honesty and vulnerability. His comments spread quickly on social media. The phrase, already known thanks to the powerful lesson from Jordan and Robert, "Great players fill stadiums, but truly, great men fill hearts," became a landmark, inspiring not only athletes, but ordinary people who saw in the story the struggle against the rush of empty success. 3 months later, Curry received a letter in a simple envelope. Upon opening it, he found a handwritten message. "Steph, I saw your interview. What touched me most was not what you said, but what you did afterward. The way you changed and prioritized your family echoes the true life lesson, that of filling hearts. Continue on this path. Your choices will make a difference for those you love. With respect, MJPS. Robert asked me to tell you that he is proud of you, and that the gymnasium will always be open for when you need a reminder." These words fixed themselves in Curry, who began to look at each day as a new chance to be better. His children began to notice the change too. The youngest daughter commented one night, "Dad, you're different, more present, happier." And he, with tears of gratitude, responded, "Because today, I chose to fill hearts, starting with ours." The impact of this transformation also reverberated in the public sphere. When, months later, during another press conference, Jennifer Walsh returned to ask about the reference made to the new and old generation, Curry explained, "I learned that the true measure of a man is not in the number of applauses or in the brightness of the spotlights, but in the depth with which we touch the lives of those around us. Today, I choose to be remembered for the love I leave, and not for the records I break. The testimony touched not only sports fans, but people from all spheres who saw in his trajectory the struggle against the emptiness of success. Gradually, the phrase became a mantra in hallways, in homes, and, including in tattoos, always reminding that the most important thing is to fill hearts. Years passed. In a not-so-distant future, when his eldest daughter turned 16 years old, she needed to complete a school project about her greatest hero. While some opted for historical figures or global leaders, she wrote about her father. "My father has always been my hero, not for his trophies or fame, but because he had the courage to change before it was too late." Upon realizing that filling stadiums was not enough to fill the absence of a loving hug, he transformed himself and taught me, and many, that true greatness is in filling hearts with love. Reading this essay, Steph felt an immense feeling of gratitude. He understood that, even encountering pain and vulnerability, he defeated his ego to reconquer what he always had that was most precious: his family. Whenever, amidst routine and the temptations to seek external validation, he felt the impulse to return to old habits, he closed his eyes and remembered. The night in the gymnasium. He remembered Robert Kim, the sincerity in his voice when saying that true achievement is not measured in filled stadiums, but in warmed hearts. He also remembered Michael Jordan, who taught him, with all humility, that true legacy is built with love. And so, Steph Curry continued his journey, not only as an admired athlete, but as a man who chose, each new day, to fill the hearts of those he loved. Because, in the end, when the applause ceases and the lights go out, what will really count will be the hugs, the smiles, and the certainty that one lived to make a difference in the lives of those closest to us.